Chapter 14:19. Wang Ru-chun shut her mouth. Her face was pale, and she was so frightened that she could not move. Jing Yunjiao acted as though he did not see anything and retracted his hand. He seemed to be disgusted by the dirty life jacket and brushed it off, causing a cloud of white dust to fly up. "Miss Jing, what are you doing?" At this moment, Jiniran appeared again. His shirt was unbuttoned, and he was hugging Qiao Hongye in his arms. Qiao Hongye's face was red, and there was a strawberry on her neck. It was obvious what had just happened. "This woman is too annoying. Throw her into the sea to feed the fish," Jing Yunjiao said. "Ah, that's quite fresh. Do you need to wear a life jacket when feeding the fish?" Jiniran glanced at Wang Ru-chun. At this moment, Wang Ru-chun threw herself at Qiao Hongye. "Miss Yi, save me. I promise I will return you the money when I get back." "Woo-woo. I don't want to die." Qiao Hongye kicked her to the side in disgust. "This is international waters. If we just throw her into the sea like this, she'll drown in less than 3 minutes. There's no way we'll be able to vent our anger. I want to see her floating around on the sea. As for how she dies, it'll depend on her luck. If she's lucky, she'll meet a shark that's looking for food and die a quick death. If she's unlucky, she'll just float on the sea for a few days, starving and freezing to death." "Jing Yunjiao, let me go. Let me go. I was wrong. I was really wrong. I promise I won't stop you. I won't tell Xiaoyun what I did, as long as you let me go." Wang Ru-chun cried. Her whole body was twitching non-stop. "I advise you to save your energy and preserve your strength. Who knows, you might be able to live for a few more minutes." Jing Yunjiao was still as cold as ever. Wang Ru-chun was in despair. When she was tied up by Jiniran, she only suffered some physical pain. But now that Jing Yunjiao was here, she thought she could escape. Yet, Jing Yunjiao was so heartless as to throw her off the boat. Although she knew how to swim, the seawater was so cold and the sea was so big. Not only was there no food, but there were all kinds of creatures in the sea. How was she supposed to survive? "Miss Jing sure knows how to have fun, but, since we're going to have fun, of course we have to make it big." Jin Yiran sneered and walked over. As soon as his leather boots landed on the boat, the sound of footsteps made one's scalp go numb. After approaching Wang Rushun, Jin Yiran took out a short knife from his waist and sneered. He lowered his head and slashed Wang Rushun's calf. "Everyone says that a woman's heart is the most vicious, but from the looks of it now, Mr. Jin, you're even more vicious," Jing Yunjiao said. The ferocious fish in the sea were extremely sensitive to the smell of fresh blood. Jin Yiran cutting Wang Rushun's leg was undoubtedly taking her life. Although she had secretly sprinkled a lot of powder on Wang Rushun's body that would make some fish repellent, it was better to be safe than sorry. Things that had been planned might not be able to prevent accidents from happening. Whether Wang Rushun could live or not depended on her own fate. Fortunately, there were 3 layers of protection. The medicinal smell on her body was only one of them. Even if it was mixed into the water, it would not be washed away immediately. The second layer of protection was the pill she had swallowed. With that pill, her body would be able to function for 24 hours and prevent her from dying prematurely due to the cold sea water. As for the last layer of protection, it was the location. She and Li Xiaoyun had brought along tracking devices. Although Qiao Hongye had checked before boarding the cruise ship, there were some advanced technologies that Qiao Hongye could not completely remove. Moreover, she had transferred some of them into her space in advance and only put them back later. Now that most of them were stuck on Wang Rushun's body, it would definitely attract the attention of Li Xiaoyun's group of brothers and even the pirates. If there were no accidents, they should be able to save her in a few hours. Who would have thought that she still loved to fantasize so much that she wanted a man who had lost his wife and broken his leg to accompany her to fulfill her dreams? Unfortunately, her dream would never come true in this lifetime. Her real father was still living a peaceful life in the capital. "Why are you all here?" Ruan Xiaoxia asked in displeasure. "Aunt Xia, don't be angry. I'm just bringing Jing Yunjiao and his daughter to reunite for a while. It won't take too long." Jin Yiran was extremely respectful towards Ruan Xiaoxia. "Temph, Jing Yunjiao, you better think carefully. Just because I'm still keeping you alive, it doesn't mean that I can tolerate your nonsense. Ruan Xiaoxia snorted coldly and said to Jing Yunjiao, Tianyi, as long as you forget about Shu Xianlan, I can even let that slut's daughter go. Of course, as long as Jing Yunjiao changes her face. After all, I want to vomit when I see her face. I think of Shu Xianlan's hypocritical and pretentious face. Chapter 1421. Ruan Xiaoxia's expression was ferocious. What a waste of her looks. The moment this woman looked at Jing Tianyi, her gaze became a little infatuated. Her changing attitude was as if there was something wrong with her mind. Jing Yunjiao walked over and placed her hand on Li Xiaoyun's shoulder, lightly knocking twice. The corner of Li Xiaoyun's lips curled up as he looked around. This was a secret signal that they had prepared beforehand. It meant that the time had come for them to make a move. However, the two of them had a tacit understanding. They weren't in a hurry and just observed the situation around them. At this time, there were about 20 people in sight, but there were hundreds of people on the boat. Among them, Jiniran and Ruan Xiaoxia were the most difficult to deal with. If possible, it would be best if she could separate them and deal with them one by one. The other men in black had guns hanging from their waists and were staring at her. As long as she made a move, they would definitely shoot immediately just in case. Before coming here, she and Li Xiaoyun had anticipated the situation on the boat. Although they could make a move now, it wasn't the best time. She had to wait a little longer. What do you think, Jing Yunjiao? Do you agree to change your face? Just as Jing Yunjiao was thinking about it, Ruan Xiaoxia asked again. Jing Yunjiao's eyes flashed. Before I answer you, I have something I want to ask you. In your hands, do you have the Jing family's secret manual that's never passed on? That's right. Ruan Xiaoxia said directly. Jing Yunjiao let out a sigh of relief. As expected, she continued, since the item is already in your hands, can you tell me where you found it? Back then, Li Wenbo looked everywhere for it. He even turned the Jing family mansion upside down several times. However, he didn't find anything. Li Wenbo? Ruan Xiaoxia said mockingly. In his eyes, there was only the Jing family mansion and the Jing family graveyard. I'm afraid that on the day of his death, he still thought that the thing was in the graveyard. But in reality, it was always by his side. He just didn't know. When your grandmother was pregnant, she gave him a gift. It was a book, an extremely thick ancient book. Written on it were some family teachings and the lives of the outstanding figures of the Jing family. How could Li Wenbo read something like that? That year, when I made a mistake, I was punished by being locked up in that warehouse for 3 days without eating or drinking. Coincidentally, I saw something fishy about that book. Every page of that book had a special paper as thin as a cicada's wing stuck to it. I didn't know what it was back then, but I thought it was strange, so I kept it. Later on, I found out that it had been smeared with medicine. After a new layer of medicine was applied to it, the secret technique of the Jing clan would be revealed. I'm not afraid to say these words to you, because that thing has already been destroyed by me. Ruan Xiaoxia sneered. She didn't know where Jing Yunjiao learned his medical skills from, but she didn't believe that it could compare to the thousands of years of the Jing family's essence. Now, that essence was only in her mind. From now on, she could pass it on to whoever she wanted. She promised that she would turn the Jing family's pride into trash in the eyes of others. In her life, she hated the Shu family and the Jing family the most. Because Tianyi was the heir of the Jing family, he had always been against the marriage arranged by Li Wenbo. Shu Xianlan of the Shu family was the same. Did they think that thousands of years of inheritance were so great? What golden couple! What perfect couple! What perfect match! She had never believed it. Chapter 1422. Ruan Xiaoxia had already predicted that Jing Yunjiao would be extremely interested in the Jing family's medical skills. Now that she mentioned that the item had been destroyed, she felt an indescribable satisfaction in her heart. She stared at Jing Yunjiao as if she was giving alms and said, if you're obedient, I might even teach you a few moves for Tianyi's sake. Although she wanted to kill Jing Yunjiao more, she was still useful. At least with her around, Tian Yi would not act recklessly. The people of the Shu family were now poisoned and were not far from death. The Jing family's medical skills and the heir were in her hands. These were enough. However, at this moment, Jing Yunjiao finally understood why so many people couldn't find the medical book. She really didn't think that it was actually personally given to Li Wenbo by her grandmother. At this moment, she was really curious. If Li Wenbo knew the truth, would he feel a trace of guilt? Unfortunately, Li Wenbo was long gone, so there was no need to fuss over the past. Don't worry about it. It is not your turn to teach my medical skills, Jing Yunjiao said directly. Ruan Xiaoxia thought that Jing Yunjiao was ready to compromise. When she heard her tough words, she suddenly became angry. I gave you face, but you don't want it. Jing Yunjiao, do you know what you are saying? This is not the Shu family where you can do whatever you want. As long as I want, even if Iran protects you, you will not be able to live. Is that so? Jing Yunjiao estimated the distance and sneered. Why don't you try? As she said that, Jing Yunjiao suddenly raised her hand and shook it. The table in front of her suddenly shook. The table spun a few times in the air and was pushed out by her hand. It was aimed directly at Ruan Xiaoxia's chest. Ruan Xiaoxia did not expect Jing Yunjiao to suddenly make a move. She did not check her wrist and used her strength to block it. As a result, she was injured. Jing Yunjiao very clearly heard a catcher sound. Jing Yunjiao wanted this effect. If Ruan Xiaoxia was prepared, she would be at a disadvantage. However, at this time, she did not know the specific strength of Ruan Xiaoxia, so she did not dare to be careless. She used 120% of her strength and rushed out of the broken wood. She raised her hand and attacked Ruan Xiaoxia's weak spot. Ruan Xiaoxia had already reacted. Naturally, she wasn't someone to be trifled with. She immediately made her move slightly resembling the style of Taoism. Jing Yunjiao now had all the memories from the spirit jade, so her knowledge and experience weren't lacking. This Ruan Xiaoxia was definitely a martial arts genius. In this era of desolation of martial arts, she had tortured herself into a martial arts master. Her moves were majestic moves. But she was a woman, after all, she was a woman, in a woman's not suitable. That kind of masculine moves. Yang's Jing Yunjiao was also not bad. 1 day in the outside world was 5 days in the space. She had more time than others. Usually, she worked hard. Coupled with the nourishment of the blue spring in the space, her talent was absolutely 1 in a million. Although her martial arts were not as good as the ancestor, it was not difficult for her to compete with Ruan Xiaoxia. Only to hear the sound of bang bang in the air. The situation was urgent. It was like a martial arts movie. Everyone was dazzled. However, they did not dare to shoot casually. After all, Jing Yunjiao's figure was moving too fast. With their level, they could not see who was higher. If they shot, it was very likely that they would hurt Ruan Xiaoxia. Therefore, they could only wait for Jin Iran's instructions. Jin Iran was also shocked by Jing Yunjiao, especially when he saw her move. His face was dignified. Just a moment ago, he wanted to keep her, but at this moment, he felt that this woman must die. Chapter 1423. If Jing Yunjiao only knew medical skills, Jin Yiran wouldn't have to worry too much with Ruan Xiaoxia around. However, the problem was that his martial arts skills were so high that he was comparable to someone who had practiced martial arts for tens of years. He wasn't someone he could restrain. Between a woman and his life, he chose the latter. He definitely didn't want his life to be threatened. Suddenly, Jin Yiran picked up the gun at his waist and grabbed Jing Yunjiao's wheelchair. He aimed and shouted, "Jing Yunjiao, your father is in my hands. Don't you want him to live anymore?" However, as soon as he finished speaking, a gust of wind came from the side and directly threw him out. The gun in his hand was also immediately snatched away. He turned his head and saw that Jing Tianyi had actually stood up with a cold smile on his face. He held the gun in his hand and jumped toward him. He quickly rolled away and dodged the attack. Jin Yiran was furious. "Qiao Hongye, this stupid woman, I told her to check carefully and not let Jing Yunjiao in with any weapons or poisonous substances. She didn't let any poisonous substances in, but she let an even more dangerous person in. How could it be Jing Tianyi with this demeanor and skill? It was obviously Li Xiaoyun. No wonder Jing Yunjiao wanted to see him no matter what. It turned out that he had set a trap for him. However, in this world, he was the only one who could deceive others. He definitely wouldn't allow anyone to humiliate him. He immediately stepped forward and started fighting with Li Xiaoyun. Although the gun was fast, it was only suitable for long-range attacks. Moreover, when one's martial arts skills reached a certain level, the gun's usefulness might not be as great. The two fights caused the subordinates to be in a dilemma. They wanted to shoot, but they were afraid of hurting Jin Yiran and Ruan Xiaoxia. They could only wait for the right opportunity to shoot. Qiao Hongye, who was at the side, was also dumbfounded when she saw this scene. She quickly hid behind the crowd, afraid that she would be implicated. The size of the ship's main hall wasn't small. The fast silhouettes looked as if they were flying up and down, dazzling everyone who saw them. Jing Yunjiao was extremely careful from the start to the end. She actually had the upper hand. Although Ruan Xiaoxia was powerful, Jing Yunjiao's martial arts could be said to have been personally taught by his ancestor. That ancestor was a person from another world. Therefore, his martial arts were slightly different from traditional martial arts. It was much more powerful. It was easy to deal with Ruan Xiaoxia. As for Li Xiaoyun, he had been learning from all kinds of people since he was a child. When he was in his teens, he began to learn to experience all kinds of dangerous missions. Although Jin Yiran wasn't a piece of cake for him, he could completely suppress him. Seeing that Jing Yunjiao and Jin Yiran's chances of winning were increasing, Ruan Xiaoxia's forehead was sweating. Although she had been practicing martial arts since she was a child, she didn't have many opportunities to practice it. Moreover, this martial art was more suitable for men. Therefore, it was difficult for her to deal with Jin Yiran. She panicked a little. Especially when she thought that the Jing Yunjiao just now was a fake, she became even more furious. She suddenly took out a medicinal powder from her pocket and sprinkled it over. However, the result was not as she wished. Within the white mist, Jing Yunjiao was unexpectedly normal. He even had a smile on his face. He directly grabbed her arm and with a catcher sound, her whole arm was dislocated. How? You want to ask why this medicine is useless? Jing Yunjiao sneered, the medical book in your hand is only a part of the Jing family's medical skills. What I have is all of it. If she didn't make comprehensive preparations, how could she come here? When she first obtained the space, she swore to the ancestor that she would carry forward the medical skills. She hadn't done that yet, so why would she foolishly send herself to death? Chapter 1424. Jing Yunjiao's action of dislocating Ruan Xiaoxia's arm also distracted Jin Yiran, causing him to make a mistake and reveal a big opening. His whole body was kicked by Li Xiaoyun until he vomited blood. On the other side, Qiao Hongye felt uneasy when she saw this scene. She thought for a moment and hurriedly said, "Everyone, open fire." Ruan Xiaoxia and Jin Yiran couldn't win against these two people. What if Jing Yunjiao took Aunt Xia and the rest as hostages? Or what if Jing Yunjiao killed Aunt Xia and wanted to kill her? To Qiao Hongye, Ruan Xiaoxia and Jin Yiran were her protectors. If these two people's martial arts were useless, then her protectors could only be reduced to pawns. When she gave the order, the others looked at each other and didn't know what to do. They didn't make a move. After all, they were all loyal to Jin Yiran. If they didn't trust them completely, they wouldn't have brought them here. Jin Yiran wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and sneered. Qiao Hongye was really a vicious dog. At the crucial moment, she even bit her master. "Open fire. Are you guys stupid? Jing Yunjiao and Li Xiaoyun are so powerful. If you don't open fire now, your guns will be useless." Qiao Hongye hurriedly shouted as she widened her eyes. She grabbed a gun from someone's hand and aimed at the four people's position. With a bang, she fired. However, her aim wasn't accurate, and the bullet directly hit the opposite wall. "I know where Jin Yiran's money is. As long as you listen to me, I promise that you will live a stable life in the future. After you leave the country, I will give each of you a severance pay. I will not treat you unfairly." Seeing that she couldn't command this group of people, Xiao Hongye raised her voice and said, "Jin Yiran had a lot of money, but it was all in foreign banks. Of course, she didn't have the qualifications to use it and didn't know how to withdraw it. However, at this moment, if she didn't say that, she would die." Her words had some effect. Immediately, many people pulled the trigger. However, there were also many people loyal to Jin Yiran. When they saw that someone had betrayed them, they immediately pointed their guns at their own people. In a moment, the situation was chaotic. She could only hear the continuous sounds of gunfire. Jing Yunjiao could only feel the bullets grazing past her body. It was extremely dangerous. However, perhaps it was because she practiced martial arts, but those seemingly dangerous weapons seemed to be simpler in her eyes. It was as if she could see the trajectory of every bullet in detail, so dodging them was effortless. While dodging, Jing Yunjiao unceremoniously grabbed Wan Xiaoxia and made her his human shield. Only a pu sound was heard. Suddenly, a few more bullets entered this stunning woman's body. She immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes widened as she unwillingly stared in Li Xiaoyun's direction. At this moment, Li Xiaoyun was still wearing the emulation mask created by the special department. He looked almost identical to Jing Tianyi. Looking at the extremely similar face, Wan Xiaoxia seemed to be reminiscing about something. However, before she could say a word, her whole body twitched a few times. Blood flowed like a river and she completely lost all signs of life. Li Xiaoyun seemed to be disgusted by Wan Xiaoxia's gaze and immediately tore off the thin mask. Bullets flew. As Wan Xiaoxia was shot, in the next second, Li Xiaoyun also pulled Jin Yiran over to block the bullets. However, Jin Yiran's luck was better. After he was shot, Li Xiaoyun didn't care about him anymore. He rushed over and pulled Jing Yunjiao to a place where there was a barrier to temporarily hide. He stuffed the few guns that he had snatched just now beside her and immediately turned his head to the side to shoot outside. "Kill her. Kill Xiao Hongye, this bitch." When the two of them were hiding, Jing Yunjiao had just started to deal with the black-clothed people who were shooting when she heard Jin Yiran's fierce and somewhat weak voice. That tone sounded like he was gnashing his teeth and seemed to be full of hatred. Chapter 1425. When Xiao Hongye heard Jin Yiran's voice, she instantly became hostile. Seeing that someone was pointing a gun at her, she immediately pulled a person in front of her and shouted, "Kill him quickly. You guys made a move just now. If you leave him alive, you will all die." With those words, the situation of the fratricide became even more intense. Blood dyed the deck of the ship red, and people fell one after another. Jing Yunjiao and Li Xiaoyun were not stupid. They had been hiding in the shadows, preventing others from getting close. However, when she thought of Xiao Hongye, Jing Yunjiao's gaze turned cold. She raised the gun in her hand and aimed at Xiao Hongye's position. A few seconds later, she fired without hesitation. With a dong sound, Xiao Hongye fell to the ground with a large hole in her forehead. Her eyes were wide open as she stared at the sky motionlessly. When she fell, the people who were originally helping her became anxious and focused all their firepower on Jin Yiran. Jin Yiran was already seriously injured and he was in a conspicuous position. Therefore, in a few seconds, the bullets entered his body and he fell to the ground. Until the moment he fell, he was still unwilling and in disbelief. He had always been confident that there were not many people in the world who could harm him to such a degree. He had clearly calculated everything, but there was an inexplicable error. Jing Yunjiao actually did not care about the lives of the people in the capital and directly attacked Li Xiaoyun. What was even more unbelievable was that her martial arts skills were actually higher than Wan Xiaoxia's. Although he knew that she was capable, he never thought that she was strong to this extent. When the blood was drawn and Xiao Hongye and Jin Yiran stopped moving, the scene became silent. The remaining people looked at each other like a group of headless flies. In the past, they listened to Wan Xiaoxia and Jin Yiran. Now that the two of them were no longer around, they would no longer have to worry about the revenge of Jin Yiran's loyal protectors. It was a kind of relief. However, There was only Jing Yunjiao and that man left. Each of them stared in the direction of Jing Yunjiao and Li Xiaoyun with guns in their hands. It was obvious that they were testing the waters. If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move either. Jing Yunjiao clearly knew that as long as she opened fire again, this group of people would turn into lunatics and fight her to the death. Suddenly, someone rushed in from outside and said nervously, "Not good, outside. There are many pirate ships around. Without a leader, it was a mess." Jing Yunjiao glanced at Li Xiaoyun, her heart completely at ease. When she threw Wang Rushun into the sea, she had already sent a signal to inform them. These pirate ships had long known their location, but they should not have been close at the beginning. It was simply a miracle that they could arrive in such a short time. This group of people was also very astute. The flags on the pirate ships were all different. They were completely different forces. At this moment, they were definitely not gathered together to watch a show. "Miss Jing, there are rules in our gang. Since you killed the boss, we'll submit to you and listen to your orders in the future," one of them said. Jing Yunjiao sneered. He only agreed to do his bidding after knowing that he was being attacked. Who were they trying to fool? However, there were so many people. Excluding those who were already dead, there were still about 100 people. She couldn't possibly kill all of them. If they were determined to die, there would definitely be some unnecessary losses. "Everyone, surrender your weapons and we'll spare your lives," Jing Yunjiao said coldly. Most of these people had cases on their hands. It was a good choice to bring them back and hold them for interrogation. Of course, there were definitely some loyal subordinates who would pretend to be loyal to Jin Yiran. When the time came, she would carefully count them. Chapter 1426. After Jing Yunjiao spoke, this group of people hesitated for a while, but when they thought of the pirate ship with cannons outside, they lowered their heads and put away all the guns around them. Jing Yunjiao looked carefully in the dark and found a few people hiding guns and waiting to take action when she was not paying attention. However, before the other party took action, Jing Yunjiao had already taken action directly, and Li Xiaoyun immediately dealt with them. After dealing with a few people in a row, the surroundings became more and more quiet, and there were no more small movements. The two of them came out to meet the people on the other ships. She did not know the pirate leader on this ship, but Li Xiaoyun's brothers were also there, so they were not strangers. The battle seemed to have ended quickly, but after Jing Yunjiao threw Wang Ruchun into the water, a few hours had already passed. "Oh right, Auntie Li was thrown into the sea by me. She was wearing a life vest and had a lot of GPS systems installed, but her leg was cut by a knife. Did you guys find her?" Jing Yunjiao didn't see Wang Ruchun in the crowd and asked. She also looked at Li Xiaoyun with a slightly guilty expression. Although the two of them didn't like Wang Rushun, the other party's status was there. Treating her like this could be considered as taking revenge on her. If Li Xiaoyun was angry, Jing Yunjiao pursed her lips. She thought that it was the best choice at the time, but she did not expect Jiniran to appear and cut her. However, Jing Yunjiao looked for a long time and did not find any special reaction from Li Xiaoyun and his brothers. "Sister-in-law, if Aunt Li was not an elder, before we met you, we would have. In short, our brother has suffered a lot because of her over the years, so you don't have to feel guilty, really." On the side, Old Seven said directly. Li Xiaoyun listened indifferently and did not deny it. His biological mother was not as sincere to him as this group of brothers. People's hearts were made of flesh, even he was the same. "Thank you, but I still have to trouble you to locate her." She took the medicine. As long as she doesn't encounter fierce fish, her life can be saved. Jing Yunjiao sighed. She still had to save her. Whether she was dead or alive, there should be an explanation. "Positioning, is it? When we came here, we found that some of the trackers were moving very quickly, but we received your support signal at that time, so we didn't care. We thought that the trackers had been found and thrown into the sea," one of them said. Hearing this, the men rubbed their noses awkwardly. Then, they hurriedly arranged for someone to investigate. Now that the sky was getting darker, and Wang Rushun had been soaking in the cold seawater for a few hours, her life, everyone's thoughts were almost the same, but they had obviously neglected Jing Yunjiao's ability. It didn't take long for them to determine her location. Several ships headed in that direction at full speed. Because the weather wasn't good, the speed of the search was a little slow. Besides, this was the vast sea. Even if there was a positioning system, it was impossible to find someone immediately. Therefore, it took a lot of time. When they saw Wang Rushun's figure, it was already dawn. When Wang Rushun was pulled out of the sea, she was still awake. However, her lips were pale and her face was bloodless. She looked like a stiff zombie. Her body was a little swollen because she had been in the water for a long time. The injury on her leg was even worse. Son, she threw me into the sea. Wang Rushun didn't say the last few words. However, Li Xiaoyun already understood what she meant. It's all thanks to our Zhao that we could save you. Otherwise, you would have been killed by Jin Yiran. So, I don't want to hear anything bad about her from you. Also, throwing you into the sea was the best decision. If it happened again, she didn't have to do it, I would do it myself. Chapter 14:27. Li Xiaoyun's attitude was firm, and Wang Rushun was already frightened. When she looked at the two of them, she suddenly felt a sense of unfamiliarity. Even though the person standing in front of her was her son, she still felt fear and trembled. It was not until this moment that she completely understood what she had lost. This powerful man would never obey her because of her status. She had been so wrong in the past. At this time, Wang Rushun completely forgot to cry. She did not dare to show her aggrieved expression in front of Li Xiaoyun. The moment she glanced at Jing Yunjiao, her heart skipped a beat and she quickly looked away. During the 10 hours that she had been drifting on the sea, Jing Yunjiao's gloomy and cold appearance occupied her mind. She did not dare and did not want to do it again. The sea was freezing. If she did it again, she would definitely die. She did not want to be so lucky. Even though she knew that it was Jing Yunjiao's idea to throw her into the sea, she still felt that if she did anything stupid, Jing Yunjiao would really not tolerate it. Seeing Wang Rushun's reaction, Jing Yunjiao only glanced sideways. She only hoped that from now on, this woman would not use her identity as Li Xiaoyun's mother to indulge her. There was no free lunch in this world. She had never given any motherly love, so what right did she have to keep asking for it? Everything was settled, and everyone returned. On the way back, Jing Yunjiao had already contacted the Shu family. At present, her eldest uncle and many other drug addicts were indeed poisoned. However, because of the medicine that she had prepared in advance, the situation was not serious and did not even threaten their lives. Not only that, even though her eldest uncle was a workaholic, he did not idle around. In private, he used the shortest amount of time to deal with the people left behind by Jin Yiran. He seized a lot of drugs and destroyed them all. His hands-on and responsible attitude changed many people's opinions of him. The higher-ups directly rejected his resignation application. As for the responsibility for the accidents, the officials only said to the public that Shu Yuantarek was threatened and that it was a temporary measure. The affairs of these big shots had little to do with ordinary citizens, so not many people paid attention to it. The first thing Jing Yunjiao did after he returned was to treat the patients. He cleared the remaining poison in everyone's body as quickly as possible. As for the drug addicts, they were sent directly to the drug rehabilitation center after the detoxification. The hidden powers had been changing generation after generation. Taking advantage of the fact that Jin Yiran had just fallen and had yet to rise to power, the government promptly suppressed them and reduced their losses. Even the air in the capital seemed to have become much fresher. The outside world had changed, and so had the Li family. Wang Rushun had just narrowly escaped death, and the old man had people send the couple out of the sea to a small island under Li Xiaoyun's name to retire. At first, Wang Rushun didn't have any objections, but after the second aunt of the Li family said a few words, she was a little unwilling. Unfortunately, she couldn't resist the straightforwardness of the old man. If she didn't go, she would end up with a divorce. Wang Rushun was not stupid. She knew that the only thing she could grasp in this life was her husband, so she chose to compromise. After all, although the small island was far away from human habitation, it was also built. There was nothing missing on it. Although it was a little lonely, it was good for self-cultivation. The second aunt of the Li family was also taught a lesson by the old man and Li Xiaoyun. She inexplicably lost a large amount of wealth left by her ex-husband. Immediately, she quieted down and avoided Jing Yunjiao when she saw him. Chapter 1428. Jing Yunjiao and Li Xiaoyun's marriage no longer had any obstacles. Coincidentally, one day, the media took a picture of Jing Yunjiao and Li Xiaoyun shopping together. It could be considered the clearest picture of Jing Yunjiao that had been exposed in such a long time. Originally, she wanted to ask the media to delete it, but seeing her own smile on the screen, she chose to acquiesce. Li Xiaoyun had already been promoted from a soldier hiding in the dark, so he wasn't afraid of people knowing his appearance. Although he was handsome, she was obviously more famous than him. Therefore, other than some well-wishers on the internet, there were also some people who were investigating Li Xiaoyun's background. There were even some people who thought she had met a beautiful man who cheated her of her money and body. There were even fans who used the opportunity when they met Xiao Haiqing to persuade her to think carefully and not be deceived by men. Seeing those words, Jing Yunjiao was overjoyed. She used Li Xiaoyun's face to make fun of him every day. However, teasing was just teasing. After all, he was her man. She couldn't let others talk nonsense. Taking advantage of a public military parade, Li Xiaoyun brought her, his wife, to directly shut everyone's mouths. Li Xiaoyun was wearing a military uniform. Compared to the standard appearance of a rich young master, he was more righteous and masculine. His tall and straight back was like a tough pine tree, making her feel very safe. It was rare to see him like this. Jing Yunjiao was actually a little fascinated by him. The two's wedding was held when Jing Yunjiao was 21 years old. It was almost a year later than originally expected. However, during this year, Jing Yunjiao did a lot of more meaningful things. Moreover, she went to many remote areas to be a traveling doctor with Li Xiaoyun. She learned a lot of things that even the spirit jade didn't have. However, more importantly, she selected a lot of disciples. Most of these people were tenacious. They knew more about the value of life than ordinary children. They also knew more about medicine and were talented and smart. Although the Jing family bloodline would be passed on to her in the future, medical skills still needed more people to learn. The oath she made in front of the ancestors in the space back then still rang in her ears. Jing Yunjiao's wedding was extremely grand. During the month of the wedding, news of the two of them was everywhere. Jing Yunjiao was wearing a custom-made ancient wedding dress with flying needles embroidered on it. Thousands of medicinal herbs were drawn on the golden silk thread. It was a picture of a medicinal garden. Although it was not as magnificent as the dragon and phoenix, it had another kind of unique beauty. Li Xiaoyun was also very cooperative with her. The two of them wore a pair of matching clothes. Jing Yunjiao originally thought that his modern hairstyle would be a little strange when paired with an ancient wedding dress. However, the moment she saw it, she knew that with his face and figure, he could completely pull off any kind of dress, and it was still very pleasing to the eye. The lively wedding lasted for a long time. For the whole day, Jing Yunjiao looked dizzy. He didn't drink, but he looked like he was drunk. With a sincere smile on his face, he didn't feel tired at all. With her cold temper in the past, she simply couldn't believe that she could allow her friends and Li Xiaoyun's brothers to mess around in the bridal chamber. "Wife, it's the wedding night. Don't we have a drink?" When the crowd dispersed, the festive red in the room dazzled the eyes. Li Xiaoyun took out a few bottles of red wine from the cabinet and shook them. Jing Yunjiao looked at the wine, then looked at him and nodded. "It's a game. The loser drinks, and every time he loses, he has to take off a piece of clothing." Jing Yunjiao blushed slightly and continued to nod. The corner of Li Xiaoyun's mouth carried a complacent smile, but after half an hour, he still couldn't get what he wanted. The wine bottle that had fallen rolled a few times. Jing Yunjiao looked at his drunken, wolf-like appearance and her mouth twitched. "Ah Jiao, this medicine dragon is interesting. Let's play again. The loser is the one below and the winner is the one above." In the middle of the night, a sentence floated faintly in the room. End of full text. Chapter 1429. It was snowing in the dark night, and the two slender figures rolled a few times in the thick snow. They were surrounded by cameras, and the atmosphere was tense and dignified. "Cut!" the director suddenly shouted. He was so angry that he shook a few times. He pointed at the two and said, "What are you doing? The snow is getting smaller and smaller. Don't tell me you won't be able to finish the scene tomorrow. Little Xiao, your actions are very good, but Yin, pay attention to the feelings you want to express now. Don't be hostile or friendly. Your emotions should be complicated. Guilt, regret, and unwillingness. Don't you know these?" Xiao Haiqing got up from the snow and looked at Yin next to her. She pursed her lips. Actually, the director wasn't stupid. The biggest problem in this scene was Yin. Ever since she debuted, she and Yin had always been on bad terms. In the past, Yin could still tolerate it, but coincidentally, the two of them took on the same movie. Although they were both female leads, the role of the most important one was snatched by a newcomer like her. So, from the start of filming until now, when they were about to wrap up, the two of them would secretly compete against each other in every scene. If it was a tit-for-tat scene, they would act as themselves, and almost all of them would pass in one take. But every time when there was a deep sisterly relationship, it was completely different. At least, they had to repeat it dozens of times. "Director, the snow is so cold. My face is frozen. I can't make any expressions at all." Yin was also full of anger and said with some displeasure. She became famous earlier than Xiao Haiqing. If it weren't for the fact that she had been silent for a long time, she wouldn't have agreed to be Xiao Haiqing's foil. Xiao Haiqing had been in the industry for 2 or 3 years. Everyone knew that she was full of vitality. Any star who worked with her, even if they were in their 30s or 40s, could welcome a second spring. Although the competition was a bit greater, she had a topic to talk about. It was also because of this that Xiao Haiqing's friends were getting better and better. "It's normal that you can't make any expressions, but can't you even move your eyes? Yin, your eyes just now didn't have any layers. What I want is an epiphany of vicissitudes, not resentment and hypocrisy. Come over and take a look at little Xiao's expression and you'll know." The director's temper was even worse, and he immediately said this mercilessly. At first, he wanted to save her some face. After all, it was indeed very cold in the snow. He could also understand the hardships of an actress. However, Yin was too uncooperative. If it weren't for her, this scene would have been over long ago. Speaking of which, although little Xiao entered the industry late and was a little young, there was nothing to say about her acting. It was no wonder that so many directors were scrambling to work with her. "Director, why don't we take a 20-minute break so that everyone can adjust their emotions?" Xiao Haiqing suggested. She wasn't stupid. With Yiwan's current state of mind, she wouldn't succeed even if she tried 10 more times. Thus, it was best for her to rest for a while. The director glanced at her and a trace of helplessness flashed across his cold face. He waved his hand and said, "Take a 20-minute break. The makeup artist will touch up their makeup." As soon as he said this, everyone around them breathed a sigh of relief. On such a cold day, the director refused to use a fake snow scene. Thus, it was difficult for them to come here and suffer. "Little Xiao, you really know how to be a person. I made the director unhappy and you want to pretend to be a good person. What do you mean by that? Do you want to tell everyone that I'm vicious and ignorant?" Yin said. "I say, big sister, you're too petty. Can't you see that I'm almost unable to speak due to the cold? If I don't act like a good person now, don't tell me that I have to accompany you to suffer the cold and hunger," Xiao Haiqing said directly. Chapter 1430. Xiao Haiqing turned around and walked back to her nanny van. She held a heat pack in her hand and finally felt a trace of comfort. Yiwan's heart was stifled with anger, so she simply got into her car. She was a little angry and said directly, "Little Xiao, you should know in your heart that I became famous before you. I'm considered a senior. I can let go of the resources you robbed from me before, but I hope you can be more sensible in the future. I stole your resources. Xiao Haiqing raised her eyebrows and looked at her in surprise. She couldn't help but sneer. Sister Yiwen, you know the situation in our industry better than I do. It's not up to you or me to decide who gets the role. Some time ago, you behaved inappropriately in front of the public, which caused others to terminate their contracts and look for me. It doesn't mean that I used underhanded means to snatch the role. So, please think carefully before you speak. It's fine if there are no reporters present now, but if a reporter comes in during the day and hears what you said, it will provide material for others to report. Xiao Haiqing took a cup of hot tea from her assistant and took a sip slowly. She also felt a little emotional. EWAN was not like this in the past. EWAN had a very good start. When she first debuted, she played a lot of likable roles. She had a good image, pure and beautiful, and had a very good reputation. However, she was too greedy and jealous. Every time she went against her, her temper became more and more strange. She was photographed by reporters many times, so her reputation was not as good as before. There were more haters than true fans. However, seeing EWAN like this, Xiao Haiqing knew more clearly what she should do. If she wanted to go further, she had to be more careful than her. However, she owed Yunjiao so much money, so even if she wanted to be proud, she had no capital. You don't need to teach me. Flowers don't bloom for 100 days. I can't do it, and you can't do it. Let's wait and see, EWAN said, then turned and left. Xiao Haiqing looked at her back and shook her head silently. EWAN was so smart in the past. She knew what she should do and what she shouldn't do. It seemed that she really overestimated her before. Xiao Haiqing didn't care about her. She drank her tea while reviewing her lines. She wanted to make sure that she could focus on the scene without making any mistakes. 20 minutes later, they started again. However, to Xiao Haiqing's surprise, Yiwan's performance was excellent. It was as if she had suddenly calmed down, which surprised the director. It was great that the whole team didn't have to suffer in the snow. Although Xiao Haiqing was curious about how she did it, she was glad that they didn't have to suffer, so she didn't ask. At night, the group checked into a small hotel nearby. After all, it was difficult to travel in the snow, and it was not safe to drive too far in the middle of the night. The environment of the hostel was average, but Xiao Haiqing and EWAN, as the two main characters of the drama, were treated well. They stayed in spacious and independent rooms. When there was no one around, Xiao Haiqing checked her phone. There were several messages. One was from Jing Yunjiao, asking her how the shooting was going. There was also a message from Hua Tianxian, joking about whether she should arrange for a handsome guy to serve her. Other than her, there were also messages from other friends. However, in the end, Xiao Haiqing's eyes stopped on Xu Wancheng's message. The message was very simple. It only asked for her current location, but it made her feel even more strange. After thinking about it, she guessed that Xu Wancheng was worried about her safety, so he sent a screenshot of her location. Chapter 1431. Thinking of Xu Wancheng, Xiao Haiqing had mixed feelings. After Jing Yunjiao got married, she couldn't live with the couple in the Jing family's old mansion, so she bought herself a small house with good security. However, Xu Wancheng found out about it. Not long after, Xu Wancheng appeared at the door opposite her house. They saw each other almost every day. At first, she deliberately avoided it, but when she found that there was no way to avoid it, she could only choose to accept it and try to maintain a good relationship with Xu Wancheng. After sending the screenshot, it was like throwing a stone into the sea. There was no response. Xiao Haiqing then remembered that it was dark outside. At this time, Xu Wancheng must be asleep. She immediately mocked herself for her intelligence. She put down her phone and went to the bathroom to take a simple shower. But when she came out of the bathroom and was about to lie on the bed, she found that the quilt seemed to be much more bulging than before. She was shocked and hurriedly went forward to pull it, only to see a naked man lying under it. And this man was the prop master. "Why are you here?" Xiao Haiqing wasn't stupid. There were not only crew members living in this small hotel, there were also some reporters. Their purpose was to dig up some information. If they heard the noise and barged in, she wouldn't be able to clear her name even if she jumped into the Yellow River. At this time, the prop master got up from the bed and rubbed his body. "Miss Xiao, it's so cold. I came over to warm you up." As he spoke, he hurriedly rushed over. Xiao Haiqing's face darkened and she kicked the man's lower body. The man howled in pain. Xiao Haiqing drove him out, but she heard some rustling outside. She was furious. Without saying anything, she walked to the window and directly jumped down from it. She only lived on the second floor, but if an ordinary person jumped down like this, they would definitely have a bad fall. Fortunately, she didn't neglect the martial arts Jing Yunjiao taught her. It was not an exaggeration to say that her body was as light as a swallow, so she successfully escaped. However, she came out in a hurry and was still wearing a bathrobe, so she was in a dilemma. There was a vast expanse of snow all around, and it was too cold to stay outside for too long. However, if they went back now, they wouldn't be able to explain themselves. After all, if someone were to ask her why she was wearing a bathrobe outside in the middle of the night, she would not be able to explain herself. Her phone wasn't with her, so she couldn't contact her assistant. The van was also locked. Xiao Haiqing suddenly felt a headache coming on. "What are you doing here?" Just then, a voice came from a few meters behind him. Xiao Haiqing was shocked, but when she turned around, she suddenly felt like she had been saved. "Why are you here?" "There's no one at home to cook, so I came out to find something to eat," Xu Wancheng said with a straight face. Xiao Haiqing's mouth twitched. Ever since the two of them became neighbors, she had been responsible for Xu Wancheng's 3 meals. This second young master had always said that he didn't know anything about cooking, so he had no qualms about freeloading. Sometimes, when she was on set, she had to find a part-time worker to prepare meals in advance to serve this second young master. This place is a few hundred miles away from the capital. "You came here in the middle of the night to find something to eat. You are really..." Xiao Haiqing was speechless. Then, she heaved a sigh of relief and said, "But you came at the right time. I'm in trouble now. I'll treat you to a meal, and you have to help me." Xu Wancheng crossed his arms and smiled. "Your trouble is not small. Isn't it a little cheap to make a deal with a meal?" "Second young master Xu, now is not the time to be calculative, right? For Yun Zhao's sake, you can't just leave me here, right?" Xiao Haiqing stared at him helplessly and said in a fawning manner. Chapter 1432. Xu Wancheng chuckled. He took off his jacket and draped it over her. Then, he glanced at her chest and said shamelessly, "Yun Zhao is Yun Zhao. Both of you are not biological sisters, and you are not my niece. Why do you have to give her face? Besides, I remember that you used to call me Second Uncle Xu. Now, you call me Second Young Master Xu. Although there is only a one-word difference, I think, there is a deeper meaning to it, right?" Xiao Haiqing's face turned red. She quickly covered her chest with his jacket. She used to call him Second Uncle Xu because she was open and honest. However, ever since Xu Wancheng confessed to her, she could no longer call him Second Uncle Xu. "Second Young Master Xu, do you want me to be on the headlines tomorrow morning? Now, there is a man in my house. If you really don't want to help me, I can only bite the bullet and go back." Xiao Haiqing looked at him pitifully. The two of them had a lot of interactions, so compared to before, Xiao Haiqing was much more mature. She could throw a tantrum or act coquettishly. "I can help," Xu Wancheng said. Then, he said, "But later, don't talk so much. I will do it. You can only nod and agree to whatever I say. Otherwise, I will go back on my words immediately. By then, your reputation will be ruined, and you will be in debt. You are ruthless. You don't have to remind me that I still owe Yun Zhao a lot of debt." Xiao Haiqing glared at him. In fact, according to her current ability to earn money, it would not be long before she could pay off all her debts. She did not have a good temper, but she knew that Xu Wancheng was like this. Especially in front of her, he would act like a fool. She guessed that it was because Yun Zhao was married and pregnant. However, as her biological uncle, young Master Li asked him to visit her for at most an hour a day, which was a huge blow to him. That was why he became more and more neurotic. However, Xu Wancheng really deserved it. The moment he saw Yun Zhao, he completely forgot about the fact that his niece was already married. It was as if the child in her stomach was his. He couldn't wait to have his eyes glued to Jing Yun Zhao's body. He even wanted to control her drinking water. That Li Xiao's jealousy had always been big. If it wasn't for the fact that he was her uncle, he definitely wouldn't have just thrown him out and limited his visiting time. Do you agree? Xu Wancheng asked again. Okay, but second young master Xu, you are also a big entrepreneur. Please don't make things difficult for a small actress like me. Please be more polite later. Xiao Haiqing had no choice but to compromise. She pitied second young master Xu for not having anyone to care for him. Even during the reunion dinner, there was no one to accompany him. In the Xu family, eldest uncle Xu's family was reunited. Grandfather Xu lived with his disciple, who was closer to him than his own son. He was the only one who was left alone. It was really miserable. Xu Wancheng nodded with satisfaction when he heard that. He walked over and put his hand on her shoulder. Xiao Haiqing wanted to refuse, but she was threatened by his gaze. She was speechless and sighed in relief. Then, they walked to the hotel together. At this time, the hotel was already very lively. When Xiao Haiqing and young Master Li arrived, all eyes were on her. However, when they saw that there was a man standing beside her, they were even more shocked. A few reporters were crazily taking photos. This time, the cold and suffering was really worth it. This was an exclusive report. Ayo, Xiao Xiao. Master Wang, who made the props, said that you two have been together for a long time and are in a relationship. But why did you suddenly throw yourself at another man? Chapter 1433. The jealous voice came from Yi Wan's direction, but it wasn't her who spoke, but her assistant beside her. Xiao Liu, don't say that. Although this gentleman suddenly appeared in the middle of the night, he might not be a wild man. Yi Wen smiled and quickly stopped her assistant. However, her voice was strange and it sounded like she was trying to cover something up. Xiao Haiqing was about to refute, but Xu Wancheng took a step forward and looked at the naked man in the room. He laughed and said, "Who are you? This doesn't seem to be your room." Master Wang glanced at Xu Wancheng and felt a little guilty. He then glanced at Yi Wen and coughed dryly, then quickly said, "I'm little Xiao's boyfriend. She asked me to come here." "Oh, if you're her boyfriend, then what am I?" Xu Wancheng sneered and looked at the man up and down. He looked at his stomach with disgust and rubbed the tip of his nose. He then laughed and said, "Your body. TSK. Little Xiao's eyesight isn't that bad. You look more like a thief, right? You failed to steal, so you framed her. Or do you have bad intentions? Fortunately, she just came out to pick me up and managed to avoid it. Otherwise, I might have died in the hotel today." Xu Wancheng finished and didn't give the other party a chance to refute. He glanced at everyone present and finally fixed his eyes on one of the men. "You're the director, right? For everyone's safety, I'll have to trouble you to call the police. I'm not a thief. I'm really little Xiao's boyfriend. I know little Xiao has a cinnabar mole on her chest." The man quickly said, "You can make a conclusion with just a cinnabar mole? If I remember correctly, there was a fight scene in Xiao's last drama. Because of the tugging, the clothes on her chest were pulled down a little, and the cinnabar mole just happened to be exposed. However, it was exposed for almost less than a second, so it was easy to miss," Xu Yuancheng said frankly. When Xiao Haiqing heard this, she looked at him suspiciously. Last movie? Cinnabar mole, why didn't she know? Moreover, he was able to see the camera that was less than a second long. This gentleman just said that little Xiao went out to pick you up. But she's wearing a bathrobe. It looks like she just took a shower. Yi Wan said softly. "Who are you?" Xu Wancheng glanced at her with a look of disdain. "I'm Yi Wan. It's impossible that you don't know me." Yi Wan was a little embarrassed. No matter what, she was still one of the most popular actresses. How could anyone not recognize her? I don't care if you have 1 bowl or 2 bowls. I only know that if you continue to talk like this, I have reason to suspect that you are exonerating this criminal. Maybe you are accomplices. When the time comes, I will have to ask the police to take you back for questioning. Xu Wancheng threatened. Ignoring Yi Wan's livid face, he glanced at the innkeeper and said, "It's impossible for Xiao to not lock the door. This man has the key to her room. I want to know how he got it. Or is you're in a scam? If you don't explain clearly and get to the bottom of this in 10 minutes, I guarantee that your inn won't be open until tomorrow morning." You talk big. Who are you? Yi Wan's assistant couldn't stand it and said angrily, "This is my business card. Today, you have 10 minutes to talk with me. After these 10 minutes, my team of lawyers will come to settle this with you, so please don't waste your time." Chapter 1434. Xu Wancheng took out a few business cards and handed them over. He didn't do it deliberately, but there seemed to be a sense of oppression. When the reporter and the director took the business cards, their expressions changed. The business cards were very simple. Only his name and company position were written on it. However, when they saw the 3 words Xu Wancheng, the director and the reporters felt bad. If it was in the past, they might not have known Xu Wancheng so well. However, in the past 2 years, Xu Wancheng's reputation in the business world was very well known. Most of his industries were overseas, but in recent years, he had been investing in some domestic industries. His vision was accurate, and his reputation was abroad. Most importantly, he was Jing Yunzhao's uncle. The Xu family had 3 heroes. Xu Yuanturek had a prominent official position, Xu Wancheng was a business genius, and the youngest, Xu Hong, was known as a detective. Although he couldn't compare with the first 2 in terms of wealth and status, his reputation wasn't bad either. A few months ago, Jing Yunzhao's wedding was unprecedentedly grand and unique. These 3 people were also famous for their love for Jing Yunzhao. Therefore, the media also published articles about the Xu family. However, they didn't expect that Xu Wancheng would actually appear in front of them. "So it's Mr. Xu. Nice to meet you." The director wasn't stupid. Not to mention Xu Wancheng's amazing financial resources, even if it was just his elder brother, it wouldn't be wrong for them to be polite to him. "Director, you're welcome. Xiao told me that thanks to your care and guidance, her acting skills have improved so much," Xu Wancheng said. Xiao Haiqing's mouth twitched. Although the director did teach her a lot, she only mentioned it in front of Yunzhao. When did she talk to Xu Wancheng? The director laughed dryly, but then he was stunned. "Mr. Xu and Xiao are boyfriend and girlfriend?" "No, yes." Before Xiao Haiqing could say anything, Xu Wancheng had already answered. Then he said, "Xiao is a public figure. I usually don't care, but I also know that she has improved a lot, so it's inevitable that people in this circle will be jealous of her. She's also beautiful, so it's normal for her to attract some crazy bees and butterflies. However, I can tolerate it if they want to pursue her, but if they want to use some underhanded methods, then forgive me for not being polite." Of course. Xiao is usually very popular in the crew. Everyone knows her character very well, the director said. The 3 members of the Xu family were all protective. In fact, even if Xu Wancheng didn't appear, he would have found a way to dodge this matter. After all, Xiao Haiqing was the #1 artist under Jing Yunzhao's company. During the casting of this drama, Xiao Haiqing's schedule was very full. It was he who went to Shentong and put down his face to get Xiao Haiqing to agree to act in this drama. He also said that he would take good care of Xiao Haiqing in the crew. If something happened, he really didn't know how to explain it to Shentong and Jing Yunzhao. When the director said this, the production crew understood what he meant. At the same time, they also felt that this matter was a little strange. This Master Wang was indeed not very good-looking, and when they usually worked, they had never seen Xiao Haiqing and this Master Wang have any relationship. However, Yi Wan occasionally chatted with this Master Wang. "I think you won't write nonsense when you go back, right?" Xu Wancheng turned to look at the reporters and said with a smile. His gaze made people feel a chill in their hearts. They hurriedly nodded, and one of them said, "We also hope to be honest. Since it's a misunderstanding, we will definitely not frame Miss Xiao. With such a high-quality boyfriend in front of them, only a fool would believe that Xiao Haiqing would be together with a prop master." Chapter 1435. Hearing the reporter's words, Yi Wan's expression changed. Xiao Haiqing also breathed a sigh of relief. Xu Wancheng actually didn't say much, but from the beginning to the end, his words were completely oppressive. She believed that no one would be so stupid as to be unlucky. However, when Xiao Haiqing thought that the matter was settled, Xu Wancheng looked at his watch and said, 10 minutes are up. Do you want to tell me the truth now or at the police station? As soon as his voice fell, the hotel owner looked embarrassed. No matter how stupid he was, he could tell that the man in front of him was not ordinary. Otherwise, why would even the director be afraid of him? He was just a small businessman, so he didn't want to be dragged down, so he quickly said, "Actually, this key was given to her by the front desk. It's like this. Just now, this young lady came over and said that Miss Xiao lost her key. We thought that she was a beautiful young lady, and she was also a celebrity assistant. Since she was with you, she probably wouldn't lie, so we handed the key to her." The hotel owner was referring to Xiao Haiqing's assistant. "It's not like that. After filming, I separated from Xiao Xiao. Later, Xiao Xiao knocked on the door and asked me to get the key, so I..." The assistant was anxious, especially when she saw Xiao Haiqing's confused face halfway through her words. She became even more nervous. This assistant was personally chosen by Jing Yunjiao. She had always been direct and efficient in her work. She wasn't smart, but she was especially honest, so Xiao Haiqing was usually at ease when using her. But now that she heard her lying, Xiao Haiqing didn't really understand. She stayed in the room and didn't even knock on the assistant's door. "Are you sure that I asked you to get the key?" Xiao Haiqing asked with a frown. The assistant nodded. "You were wearing a bathrobe, but not this one. It was pink. In addition, you had a thick mask on your face. It wasn't convenient for you to talk, so you wrote it for me with your phone." Hearing this, Xiao Haiqing immediately understood. How was this her? "Director, it looks like we have to investigate this matter thoroughly. Someone pretended to be my assistant. If we don't catch her, I won't feel at ease. It will be difficult for me to concentrate on filming in the future," Xiao Haiqing said. Everyone was smart. It was easy to find someone who could impersonate Xiao Haiqing. Xiao Haiqing's figure and height were very outstanding. There were very few actresses like her in the entire cast. This person could hide from Xiao Haiqing's assistant, so their figure was definitely 90% similar. Otherwise, it would have been easy to be discovered. And the only one with such a great degree of similarity was a substitute. Xiao Haiqing knew martial arts and rarely used a substitute in dangerous situations. However, it did not mean that there was no substitute. There was only one. Thinking of this, the director and the others turned to look at the stunt double, only to see her flustered expression. As expected, she had given herself away. She hurriedly said, "I didn't do it on purpose. Miss Yi Wan's assistant made a bet with me to see if I could get the key without Miss Xiao's assistant noticing. I was so excited. I gave the key to Yi Wan's assistant. All of a sudden, the truth came to light. Yi Wan and her assistant panicked. Because the atmosphere was too tense, before Yi Wan could say anything, the assistant had already opened her mouth. Yi Wan asked me to do it. I didn't know that she wanted to give the key to Mr. Wang." As soon as she said that, Yi Wan knew that she was doomed. The reporters had a strange look on their faces. If they had doubted Xiao Haiqing's innocence before, they were sure that she was innocent now. They had asked that question in front of everyone. How could it be fake? Moreover, they had already discovered a lot of scandals about Yi Wan before, so they knew that there was a huge gap between her and her real self. Chapter 1436. As soon as this matter was made clear, Xu Wancheng and Xiao Haiqing didn't have to say anything. The director had already called the police. Although it wouldn't be good for the film's reputation, leaving EWAN in the crew would give them a headache. Fortunately, although this film had 2 female leads, Xiao Haiqing's part was more important. Moreover, there would be a twist later on, so it wasn't impossible to replace her. Although they would lose a lot of money, in order to prevent people from boycotting the film, it was better to be decisive. Director, listen to my explanation. I didn't do it. Yi Wan saw the disappointment in the director's eyes and quickly shouted. However, at this time, everyone shook their heads. The reporters swarmed around her and didn't give her a chance to explain. Before the police arrived, these reporters wanted to dig into Yi Wan's mentality. After all, this matter would definitely become a hot topic later on. Xiao Haiqing and Yi Wan entered the room together under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Xu Wancheng's hands were still around her waist. Second young Master Xu, do you know that your eyes are very wretched right now? Xiao Haiqing said with a smile. Really? Wretchedness and infatuation are almost the same. If you look at me for a while, you might realize that I actually admire you very much. Xu Wancheng didn't even bat an eyelid when he talked big. I heard from Yun Zhao that you only pursued one girl when you were in college. But looking at you now, you seem to have gone through hundreds of battles. Just now, in front of so many people, you said that I am your girlfriend. You kept saying ching ching, which gave me goosebumps. Second young Master Xu, where did you learn to call me that? Xiao Haiqing was carefree. She didn't stand on ceremony with him. She sat directly on the bed and took off his jacket. She leaned on the bed and said. The media already knew that they were a couple. What was done was done. As his girlfriend, she naturally had to exercise her rights. Previously, she didn't dislike Xu Wancheng. After reporting to Jing Yunjiao, she had opened her heart. She didn't officially establish their relationship, but she lacked an opportunity. That guy from the Li family is more disgusting than me. Xu Wancheng snorted. Then, his eyes wandered a few more times on Xiao Haiqing's body. Xiao Haiqing's body was absolutely hot. Her peach blossom eyes were even more charming. Her fragrant shoulders were exposed, and her body exuded a light fragrance. Her hair was still wet. It was hard not to be tempted. As he watched, Xu Yuancheng felt the tip of his nose heat up. The next moment, he saw 2 lines of blood falling to the ground. Xiao Haiqing looked at him and laughed. She covered her stomach and curled up on the bed. She pointed at him and was extremely arrogant. Xu Wancheng's face stiffened. He wiped his nose seriously, but the heat in his body came out layer by layer. After a while, the nosebleed was wiped clean. However, his body was very honest. He didn't know when he walked to the bed. Seeing that Xiao Haiqing was still there gloating, he suddenly reached out and pulled her bathrobe. In an instant, she felt that her eyes seemed to have turned pink. Stinky hooligan. Xiao Haiqing immediately punched him. Just now, she was deliberately teasing Xu Wancheng. She definitely didn't expect that she would get angry. However, this punch was actually avoided by Xu Wancheng. He even rolled over and directly hugged Xiao Haiqing in his arms. With the warm jade in his arms, he suddenly pressed his whole body against hers. Xiao Haiqing's mind went blank. Her whole body became soft. After a while, the bed's quality was not very good. The 2 of them seemed to be fighting. They tossed and turned, and were inseparable. The window next to them was not closed. Layers of snowflakes kept drifting in, but they didn't notice. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.